Could you tell me the story on somebody like this guy who was arrested and I guess got sentenced to 30 years in jail for during his job on the cruise lines was secretly videotaping naked people in by hiding hidden cameras in their restrooms in their bathrooms, including a lot of children. So now everybody's suing the cruise lines, but he says he can't help himself when he admitted to what he did. Couldn't help himself. So, what is it that in a story like that, what is it that would bring about this particular development in a soul history? Very, very sad stories because these people are often retrieving past memories of having been enslaved and sexually abused. And they can't regulate their compulsions because they were unable to release themselves from the tendency to be daily trust on a new point of view. So they had been the ones who were abused in their prior life because they were children who were taken advantage of by their masters, you see. And so in this lifetime, they wish to undo the damage that was done to them by trying to understand why anyone would do that. And so, in order to understand why anyone would do that, they find themselves doing something they don't want to do, but they have a strange compulsion to do it, you see, because they had the desire to get the other side of it, to see the other point of view. And so, this compulsion to abuse children sexually has its roots in the history of humanity because you see, it was a way of being in a relationship that was not forbidden by the society. The society tolerated the sexual use of children in order to eliminate the frustration of the males who could not find a mate who was growing, you see, because a lot of these people in the ancient times lived in small groups. And sometimes there would be an overabundance of males and not enough females, you see, of an appropriate age. And the males, of course, were sexually pressed to express their natural desire to procreate, which is what the sexual desire is. It is the desire to create the next generation. And this is how it began. It began in a very, very innocent way, you might say, because in that day, as soon as a child was sexually available, that is to say, about the age of 11 or 12, depending upon the area and the maturation of that particular group, because some groups matured earlier and some later, they were considered fair game, you see. And so a child of 11 who was already menstruating was considered sexually available to a man of 33, say. And it wasn't a big deal because they didn't have the same laws in their groups, etc. However, some of these children, we'll call them children, although they were technically capable of reproducing the next generation, were unaware of the access to sexuality. Even though they were physically there, they were not emotionally there. And they did not want to be involved in a sexual relationship with these men who were so much older. It wasn't so much a problem for the women because their sexuality was easily taken care of in just about any society because they were not so driven by the need to procreate, you see, because often they would be mothers and nursing babies, and they really didn't care to have sexual relationships in the way that men demanded it. And so the men would continue to look to the children, you see. And so the children grew up with this understanding that when you were older, you could abuse the children, although they did not think of it as abuse at that time. They just thought of it as the pattern in their society. And little by little, people began to say, well, leave the children alone because they like to play and they don't want to be burdened by your sexuality. A child of 11 does not want to be a mother at 12, you see. She wants to run and play and have a good day with her friends, you see. And so there began to be a penalty for those who would turn to the children for sexual satisfaction. And gradually it became forbidden, you see, to have sex with children under a certain age. And there was a prohibition, of course, upon having sex with anyone unless you were married. And this was one way of trying to protect the children, among other considerations. However, the habits that had arisen continued to play out, you see. And so the ones who had been used sexually when they were only 11 or 12 began to say, well, now I'm older. I guess I'll play the same way. And they continued to do that because although a certain percentage of the population was in favor of protecting the children, the habitual patterns still flowed through society. And so it continued, of course, in many ways that eventually became so gross that it continues today as a way that people say, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, but I have to do this because something inside me makes me do it, you see? And this is the result of how many atrocities have been committed against children through the ages. Because every time someone condemns you for having sex with an 11-year-old, then you feel the shame and blame. And that means you're on the karmic wheel. And you have to relieve your shame and your blame. And how are you going to do that? Unless you can feel the other side of the issue so that somebody will abuse you in the next lifetime. So, little by little, it has become a dark thread that runs through the lives of many people. For example, Steph, you were abused as a child in your last lifetime, and in fact, in almost every lifetime we can think of before you were 14. And you hated it so that you had to grow in order to let it go. You didn't become an abuser because you were trusting on love, you see. And so you would say, well, I don't know why they play that way, but there is something they need from me, and I don't see how they can get it unless I help them see that they don't need to be so sad, you see. And so, through the ages and the stages of your particular journey, you began to see that you had a tendency to attract men who would want to have sex with you, even though you didn't even know what sex was, really, because your energy was so trusting, you see. You trusted that everybody just wanted to be happy, and therefore you wanted them to simply understand that they could be happy if they would release their anxiety about it all, because they had a lot of anxiety that had accumulated from their prior lives, you see, on whichever side of the game they played. And they needed that release in order to cease doing what they were doing. But in order to get the release, they had to realize that they were simply treading the light fantastic in the most upside down way, because they would play the abuser in one life, and in the next life they would be the one that is abused. And they seem to forget the balance, you see. And this resulted in a lot of chaos in the world. So you're not going to punish it out of people, you see. You can only love it out of them. And this is something you came to see, that it has nothing to do with being a victim, you see. It has to do with stepping into your own power and refusing to be a victim. And you in this lifetime have refused to be a victim. And you have said, I don't dread to think about what happened to me because you see, it didn't harm me, did it? I am still here and I still hold myself dear. I don't hate myself. I don't resent the fact that somebody wanted to have sex with me, even though I didn't know what would happen when they were attracted to me. I didn't know that's what they wanted to do because I was without a clue, you see. And this is because you have always been so trusting on others, you see, that they only wanted to be happy. They only wanted to be happy. And so you say to yourself, well, when a man took advantage of me because I didn't know that he could do what he did when I was not even awake, you see, then he must have been trying to solve some mystery in his soul energy. He must have been trying to relieve some anxiety about a past life, you see, and that's exactly true. That's exactly true. That we are in the clutches of the karmic round until we say, I am found. I am found. And when you say, I am found, then you say, I get it today. I get it today. That the way I play has a lot to do with my past lives, you see, because you, Stephanie, have often been used sexually by those who had control over you. This happened lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And you have had to come to know that unless you could let them go, then you would have to go through it in a different way because there are many ways to play this out. You could be the parent of a child that is sexually abused. You could be the parent of a man or woman who abuses children. You could be the sibling of them, and you could see it from many directions, and you could see how it affects people, you see. But the one thing that will keep you on the karmic ground is to condemn any one of them. If you condemn the one who has raped, you see, as many did in the last century, then you are condemning yourself to a fate worse than death because you will not die, of course, because you don't die, but you'll have to be the one condemned, you see, in one way or another. And if you condemn the rapist, then you have set yourself up for a hard ride because what you condemn, you shall become, you see. You shall become what you condemn. And so I would not recommend that you condemn anyone, and certainly not yourself. Don't condemn yourself to having to be the next version of the one you condemn, you see. Just understand that all of humanity is a trust on reality, and therefore they will play in a way that will bring them back to me and to peace and harmony when they are ready, when they have had enough of playing that game. However, it is very hard for people to understand why a rapist or a pedophile would seek to abuse their power by selling images of a child that will excite others, or by getting excited by taking a picture of a naked child. Why do they do that? What is that about? How can they understand it when they are taught from the time that they are children that they were spontaneously created when they were born? So they didn't come into this lifetime with any history, you see? And if they didn't have any history, how could it be that they're the ones that's the pedophile and their neighbor is not? How did that happen if they don't have any history? And so the idea that has been spread falsely by the steeple people that you have one life to live and that you have to give thanks for the fact that you didn't get caught when you were a pedophile is so sad to hear. Because, my dear, they fear me. They fear me so much they don't want to say, well, God, I'm the pedophile today, and I can't help it. I have a compulsion to photograph children naked. Why is that, God? They're afraid to ask me that. They're afraid to come to me and say, God, I'm a pedophile. Help me. They're afraid to say, God, I need your help to sort this out today. God, I need your help to sort out why my child was raped by a stranger or even a relative today. They don't come to me to ask. They say, damn that rapist who harmed my child. They'll go to hell. And so you see, they condemn themselves to hell because you can't condemn another. Because that means is that you condemn yourself, you see. Because you are always the one you condemn. You are always the one you condemn. It's like looking in the mirror and saying you're condemned. So don't condemn another, just say, I'm sorry you feel that way. Let's talk about it and let's try and figure it out. Because once, for example, the pedophile feels safe to talk about it, which they can't do, not even to a therapist in this day and age, then they will begin to relax, you see, and they will let go some of their anxiety. And they will say, well, maybe I don't have to play that way. Maybe I can figure out how to bring love into the picture. Maybe I can love myself today. And maybe I can say, well, now I understand what motivated that rapist who raped me in my last lifetime. And I damned him to hell. And now I have to play the part of the one I damned to hell, you see, and be damned to hell by someone else. And so if someone condemns you for what you do, you have to say, I deserve it today. I always deserve what I get, you see, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't love me. And it doesn't mean that I cannot be free of hatred, you see. I can just say, well, thank you for that because I know that I deserved it, and therefore I know that the scale is being balanced, you see. The scale is being balanced because now I know what it's like to be condemned, you see. So thank you for condemning me, and I won't condemn you because if I did, I would just start the game all over again and go around the karmic wheel all over again. I don't want to do that. So thank you for what you did. Thank you for condemning me. And don't condemn another, you see. Just accept it as what you deserve and come back to me and say, God, I guess I deserved that, didn't I? And I will say, yes, you did, dear. And now you deserve a pat on the back and a kiss from me because you see, I love you, dear. And when you can hear me talk to you this way, then you're ready to get off the karmic round and become sound of mind. And then you will be sound of heart as well, because you'll hear the sound of my voice talking to you and saying, I love you true. I love you true. And I know you love me too. Thank you, God.